Good morning, everyone. On behalf of ECIA, the European Confederation of Institute of Internal Auditors, welcome to this new episode on the Risk in Focus webinar series. Today, we will discuss about human capital that stands as the risk number 2 for a few years now on the list, and is quite important for internal auditors to acknowledge and manage and audit. So today we will use to facilitate the discussion with you participants, Slido. So please connect to Slido either through your laptop and use the code Human Capital, or you can just scan the QR code that appear on the screen. To facilitate the discussion today, we plan to have Chiara Velenik, and unfortunately, she could not be with us today, but Chiara, thank you very much for the great support you gave us in the preparation of this webinar. So the session will be facilitated by Stefan Weiss. Stefan is currently Chief Audit Executive of Roche. Roche is a healthcare company based in Basel, a global company. And I think I may say, Stefan, that you have more than 20 years experience in audit and risk management, and not just in Europe, but also in Asia and the US. So your experience will be very appreciated today for the discussion. So let me stop here with the introduction and give you the floor, Stefan.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much, Pascal, and a very warm welcome from my end as well. I think it's never too late to wish everybody a happy new year. And so hope you had a good start into 2025. We'll continue with the introduction. It's my pleasure to welcome the panel of today's conversation. I'll give a quick round of introduction of the speakers that we have today, of the panelists, starting with Laurent. He is joining from Capgemini, a global systems integrator company based in France. They're present in about 50 countries, 340,000 employees. And he's joining us from Paris today. Then we have Maritza. She is working for Metlin, which is an energy and industrial company. Maritza is based in Athens. The company that she works for has about 7,000 employees and is present in 40 countries. And then we have Vanessa as well joining us today. Vanessa works for BBVA. She's based in Madrid. BBVA is a financial group present in 25 countries, and they have about 120,000 employees. So I think it's nice to see the diversity of the panel that we have today in terms of gender and also in terms of in the industries that we're actually joining from. So yeah. Lovely, good to start with that. So a quick note or a quick foresight into the program of today. We will be sharing some of the results on the Risk in Focus report that Pascal just mentioned before. We'll be kicking off with that with a couple of insights. Then we will be asking you, the participants, to answer a few questions that will then set the stage for the panel conversation after that. And we do have a bit of time at the end for the Q&A. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's get started. Pascal, if you don't mind to turn to the next slide. So I guess most of you know Risk in Focus and the process behind it. Just to recap real quick, the survey was conducted back in early 2024. I think there's about 1,000 professionals from internal audit that contributed to that survey. And it's really sort of identifying what's on the top of the mind of the internal audit community in terms of risks and where do we have a presence. That survey was then complemented with additional interviews and also some interviews and also some roundtables. So on the first slide that was just on before, you see the results of the survey. Where you basically see that human capital is number 2 in terms of the risks and opportunities that we see in that space as internal audit. It has been a steady number 2, so it has been in the past always up there, and you see that about it's in 50% of the organizations this is felt to be one of the top 5 risks. Just, obviously a bit behind cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is on everybody's mind. And so, yeah, I think it is something that is generally on people's mind. And on this slide that is presented right now, you see, first of all, the risk priority again, same as in the prior slide, but then you also see the time that we actually spend on this, the presence that we have. And you see a pretty gap in terms of what we think the risk actually is and how it is on the alert level. But then at the same time, our presence isn't quite there. Now, I guess you can hypothesize why that is. It's definitely, it's not as clearly defined of a risks in terms of processes, controls, and all of that as some of the other risks that you see here. There's some of the things, retention, talent management, there's maybe a bit more that's available in terms of policies, in terms of controls, in terms of strategies. But when you go into diversity, these subjects then do get a bit more fluffy and are sometimes a bit harder for us as internal audit to look at. With that, let's have a look at the next slide. So this is where we expect this to go over the next couple of years. And you see, as in the past 3 years, it's been steady. And we believe that it will be sort of steady. So it's one of the top risks up there. It's lost slightly a bit of rank, or is expected to lose a bit of rank against AI and new technologies. But still, it's something that is on everybody's mind. With that, we can go to the next slide. Yeah, and so also in terms of times and effort spent, not a big change there as well. I mean, you see some of the areas are shifting quite a bit, or we're hoping to shift them quite a bit, but the human capital stays approximately where it is. So some presence, but again, maybe not entirely the presence that it should have, that it would deserve, considering the importance that it has. So with that, I think it's the time now to get active for everybody. We have a couple of questions that we want to ask you and get a bit of your perspectives on, again, what is the presence of you in some of the areas that we're going to touch on, which we should be having on the next slide.
If I may, I invite everyone to fill in Slido, and I will share with you verbally the results, Stefan.
Oh, okay.
So here you are.
Excellent. So the first question is around multi-generational workforce. Again, a subject that we'll be exploring a bit today. And the question to you is, what's your presence in that space? So yeah, we still have people selecting, but I think the trend is pretty clear. Maybe not entirely surprising. So yeah, I think it's stabilizing around 50% no role. If you look at the assurance, somewhere around the 20%. So yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to go a bit into the subject as we head into the panel session afterwards. Yeah, perfect. I think that's good enough, Pascal. Shall we go to the next question? So the next one is on talent management. Again, to what extent do you have a presence in talent management? All right, we have 100 people that have given feedback and no role of 60%. Some assurance role, 20%, and then some advisory. I would say that was maybe a bit on the surprising side, the ratio of organizations or internal audit organizations that don't play a role in talent management. And then the third question is when it comes to well-being. What is your role there? Do you have a presence when it comes to employee well-being? Yeah, so I think we have a very clear trend there as well. No role. Yeah, so it looks like we've actually picked on 3 areas that could be really interesting to explore during the panel. And I think we'll share with you a bit on the what some of the ideas are. I do probably also admit that not everybody has a solution or does have a presence. So we'll be a bit humble as well. Now, we want to start a bit more general first with the topic number 1 that you see here, and just get a bit of an understanding from the panel. How much time do you spend on human capital topics? How many audits per year do you do? What's the percentage roughly that you allocate to human capitals as you look at your audit plan and your audit execution? And I would like to ask Laurent to give us his first perspectives, please.
Thank you, Stefan. So Capgemini is indeed an IT service company. So as a consequence, human capital is absolutely the main asset of the company. So logically, audit of human capital represents about 20% of the overall workload. Human capital is also pervasive in other sections than the human resources audit. So this extends to notably sales, operations, security, real estate, CSR. For instance, in our operations, people certifications, health and safety are extremely important areas of audit. In order to prepare for the audit approach, it is also important to have key risk indicators in the approach. The key metrics we look at are the attrition rate and the engagement level of the employees as measured in the employee surveys. In terms of scope, we really audit end-to-end. Okay, so we cover from talent acquisition to onboarding, deployment of staff, engagement, rewards, well-being, health and safety, people security, learning and development, diversity and inclusion, and offboarding.
Great. Thanks a lot, Laurent. I think that was a well-rounded picture from Capgemini. Maritza, do you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you first of all for having me here. Thank you for the introduction. And yes, regarding this question, Metlen is also a labor-intensive business, and in our plan of 2024, we devoted, I would say, more than 20% of our time this year in people matters. We decided to cover new people management systems that have been put in place, new compensation and benefit structures, and of course, CSRD and health and safety matters. Now, regarding the strategic importance, yes, the health and safety matters are considered of strategic importance in Metlen, and in view of the CSRD, the social matters also are part of, apart from being assessed as material, they are also considered mandatory for the disclosures. And this is why our team is involved in providing limited assurance on financial reporting matters for the second year, and that's why we covered these topics. Going forward, we believe that CSRD and ESG reporting will require increased attention and annual attention to people matters. And also the EU Pay Transparency Directive that will come in force in 2026 will also lead to increase in time from our side. in terms of engagement. So we foresee more time to be devoted in the future in this aspect, in this element.
Yeah, perfect. And Vanessa, anything to add from your side from BBVA?
Yes, thank you, first of all, for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. In BBVA, last year, we had more or less 30 engagement with a dedication in the whole group of more or less 5%. But we are planning also, as Marisa mentioned, to include this percentage for the coming years. We have a challenging plan based on 4 pillars. First of one is all the regulatory requirements, the existing one, but also the new regulation that will come in the next years. Second one, talent management processes. We are planning to cover the whole employee life cycle. The third pillar is all internal processes from the area, with a big focus in ESG reporting and all the new requirements that are coming new. And last one, the social risks, including issues like diversity, accessibility, and well-being.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Vanessa. So maybe briefly recapping for Roche. So we do about 5 to 10% of our audits that we spend on these subjects. For us, it's also maybe a bit more to the traditional one, like talent management that we would look at, sometimes safety. We typically fold these into existing functional or country audits, but it's roughly 5 or 10%. And we try to explore a bit of the more challenging areas as well, like diversity, equity, and inclusion as well in the future. I did now hear quite a few subjects actually on the coverage that we're having, sort of the new regulations coming into place, looking at social matters. CSRD was mentioned. So we'll park these for the moment. We do have a Q&A at the end. So if anybody thinks that's something we should maybe spend a bit more time on, or that is very relevant, then please feel free to ask some questions afterwards in the Q&A, and we see how the questions rank up, and we can do a bit more of a deep dive in some of these subjects. So with that, let's go to the next topic, which is around multi-generational workforce. We hear a lot about Generation X, Y, and Generation Z coming into the workplace as well, often with a bit of different interests or expectations, what they expect from the company. They also have, sometimes different values. And so here the question is, again, how should the internal audit deal with this? Is this something that is on the top of our minds? Is this something that we can actually audit? And if it is, what would that be? And here I would like to pass the word again. I think it's Laurent who is going to kick us off with some thoughts on this and some tips and tricks.
Yeah,
Please,
thanks, Stefan. And as you mentioned, so it's absolutely a key topic for us at Capgemini. In total, the Gen Y and Gen Z are representing more than 80% of our population. So we need to keep well on track as to what they expect. So what we have seen as expectation is really the work-life balance, hybrid work, equal opportunities and rewards, and ESG. So to focus a little bit more on each of these topics. So one item, which is for someone of my generation, so a bit older, I'm seeing the younger generation are much more transparent about their salaries than the older generation. So they would expect, you would expect that they talk about each other's salaries. So you would need, I think, to have an HR department and the salary department, which is really coming up with salary grids, and ensuring that there is no, big gap between the different people. Okay, because there is a lot of resentment potentially on this topic. So that's one item we are definitely looking at. Secondly, on the hybrid work, there is also a lot of expectation on that. So are the policies in place? How do we measure office attendance? Another topic is the work-life balance, obviously. So we measure that. We have employee survey. We look at that. We also look at the timesheet of people, especially in the context of duty of vigilance and human rights. We ensure that, we don't have people working, not taking their holidays, not doing, always overtime. Finally, I think really the younger generation put more focus on ESG matters. Okay, so it's important not just to have, image on that, but they expect really their company to be profoundly involved on those matters. So indeed, they expect they want to see a real meaning and purpose for what their companies are doing. Communication on the ESG matters, on indeed, as you mentioned, Stefan, earlier, diversity, equity, inclusion, etc. All those things are being monitored by this younger generation, and they speak out. Again, the same way they are being very transparent about their salaries, they are also being very transparent on the feedbacks that they give on these topics.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks a lot, Laurent. Vanessa, anything from your side?
Yes, as Laurent mentioned before, we have different people working together in our company, so we need to ensure that it works and that everyone has equal opportunities. In BBVA, we performed last year in an assurance way an engagement, not only about multi-generational diversity, also we include gender and different capabilities diversity. The objective in our engagement was to evaluate if all the initiatives that our company were developing were enough to fulfill with the public commitments they have, the regulatory requirements, and also the expectations of all the stakeholders. We review the governance framework and how diversity was included in all the processes, for example, in hiring, in promotions, in training, in the different processes of the area. We consider that it has to be integrated in all of them. And also we review all the data associated with diversity that it's included in the annual report. Maybe our main learning and my advice.
I don't know whether it's my connection or Vanessa's.
Seems to be Vanessa's.
It seems to be
It's Vanessa's.
Okay, okay. Good. Then until she's back, maybe I just quickly add my perspective on it from the Roche side. So I must say I'm actually quite impressed, Nora, with what you mentioned. There seems to be
Vanessa? Yeah, I hear. Yeah,
all
I hear, sorry. No, I was mentioning that deep data analysis is essential to see, for example, in the different processes, there are different behavior depending on your age. For example, if older people has less amount of promotion. So I think working with data, it's really important to make deeper conclusions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. I want to have a follow-up question afterwards on the data. Actually, I think that's quite an interesting one to explore. What I wanted to say, really brief, I'm actually quite impressed with the areas that you look at. I mean, in our case, yeah, it is sort of in the back of our head, with this multi-generational workforce and how you bring it together, how you get this diversity to work effectively. But we often look at it actually more from a capability perspective. Do we understand what the capabilities are, and then which generation could work with these capabilities or would fit these capabilities a bit better. But Vanessa, to build on what you said in terms of data, I mean, I was actually in the preparation, I was also reflecting on our end. I mean, we do have a big employee survey that we do every 2 years. Now, I'm not sure whether it's sort of split by generation, but there's a lot of hypotheses around how different generations tick. Again, that they might have a bit of different values, different interests. Actually, I would think these employee surveys, which do touch a variety of subjects, they could probably be a good starting point as well to maybe look at, where do we see some of the gaps, where do we see some of the differences, where could that then create some of the risks of organizations not working effectively. Do you have any experience, again, Vanessa, Laurent, or Maritza, if you feel free to chime in as well.
So definitely, the employee survey is the gold mine of data, for audit. I think as I was saying in my introduction, the two things we look at, it's really the attrition rate. So how fast are people moving out of the company? And that's clearly a sign of the discomfort or misalignment with market or what have you. And secondly, it's really what we call pulse internally. So it's really, we have it very frequently, almost every month in the company to measure the different areas, engagement, loyalty, feeling of belonging, feeling of equality, respect of the values, etc. So really very different chapters are being measured, and they really help us, to pinpoint. Again, this area is strategic for us. Human capital is absolutely strategic. So understanding what our people have to say about, very regularly about their level of commitment and engagement is really a good mind for us to help us prepare, the human capital audit. So obviously we have only the metadata, we have summarized the data. We don't have results per individual for obvious reasons, but it's definitely a good mind to look at.
Perfect. Great, thanks. If there's no more comments, then let's go to the next one, which is talent management. So yeah, I think everybody knows the problem and the risk here. We are living in a very competitive world, also for talents. There is a perceived shortage of talents out there. Now, we can probably debate over what an exact definition of a talent is, but I think the subject itself definitely sticks. So Vanessa, maybe I can ask you to kick us off here. What are some of the things that you're doing in the space of talent management?
Yes, sure. As I mentioned before, one of our 4 pillars in our annual plan is talent management. We are planning here to cover the whole employee life cycle, since how the company plan the workforce they need to fulfill with the strategic priorities until the boarding on the employees. Last year, we decided to start with talent retention because we thought that it was one of the most risky issues. We developed an advisory engagement because our company was working in a plan, in some tool. It was something new. They didn't have a lot of experience, so we thought that an advisory way will be better. We try to identify if they were prepared to identify the flight risk, and maybe it cannot be a problem now, but it can be a problem in the future. So we wanted to see if we were prepared and if they have mechanisms to identify and to treat with that. We review all the tools, all the models available to try to detect this risk before it happens, before that you have a real problem. You need to work and to try to put measures before. All the ex-ante and ex-post mechanisms, all the action plans, and also it's important to evaluate if the companies have enough KPIs to see how it's going. Our main learnings from this engagement, it's not an easy engagement. It's not something regulatory. We didn't have experience. At the end, you have to talk with a lot of people to analyze different processes. So maybe you need to dedicate a lot of time to plan what you want to see before starting. Of course, planning an audit is always important, but in topics like that, I think it's even more important to dedicate plenty of time for a good planning.
No, perfect. Thanks a lot. Maritza, any thoughts from you?
Yeah. In our case, we didn't perform an audit engagement specifically focused in workforce management, but during the audit of the corporate governance system, we had to take a closer look into the dimension of succession planning and the progress of the action plans that our talent management team is implementing right now. So our goal was to provide the assurance for the effectiveness of these procedures, to recognize talents, to move the talents and promote them when needed to sustain the company's operations, and as a result, also provide assurance for the compliance with the relevant principles of the UK code that the company is adhering to. So this is how we moved into this direction and how we covered this direction, this element, the workforce management. We covered the succession planning.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot. Laurent, I guess this is also quite an important area for you, isn't it?
Yeah, it's absolutely crucial for us because people joining a service company, they want to evolve, so they need to be managed. We need to manage their growth. So it's really a three-step approach. The first thing is to have realistic targets being assigned to them, both on their their delivery, their performance, but also on their personal growth. Giving them target also on what they need to learn. Secondly, to measure that constantly, so we ensure as auditors, we ensure indeed that the dialogue is open, that it happens regularly, at least yearly, but it needs to happen more regularly than that, and that their performance is being measured against these realistic targets which have been set. And the third part is indeed, everything related to the skill development. So their career path, depending on, where you stand, if you're a code developer or if you're an engineer, etc. You have different routes, to develop yourself. Project managers have their own track, for instance, and with different certification levels. And so it's important to push them and to see if indeed, they are following this route. They have minimum. So we have set up targets, with minimum number of hours of learning every year. So we look at that, are these plans being deployed in the entities we audit, so that people receive, the learning time that they deserve and that they need to take, in order to be even more value added when they are in front of customers.
Perfect. Yeah. And maybe I'll just add from our end. I mean, we typically, when we look at talent management, it's usually not something we look at in a dedicated way, but we try to understand when we go into an organization whether that is a risk, whether that is an issue within an organization, and if it is, then we would review it. And there, you can maybe look at it from a life cycle perspective, from the acquisition, then to the development, the retention, and if some of them exit as well, you probably want to understand as well what the controls are there. To get feedback from the employees on what has worked and what hasn't worked. So for us, it's a bit more on an ad hoc basis. If it's important for an organization, then we do look at it, and we do look at it as sort of, you could maybe even say as part of a normal employee life cycle, that they have the different elements in place. And I think that's probably something also that I would argue is fairly tangible, that shouldn't be a big hurdle to look at as you do your audits. Good. Then let's go to topic number 4, which is well-being, employee well-being. Another very important one. We do have a colleague, Maritza, right? You're working also, you have a lot of manufacturing sites. So what is your approach when it comes to employee well-being as internal audit?
So in this area, we wanted the last year to assess the relevant HR policies and procedures and whether these are aligned with the needs of the various groups across the organization, at least in the places where material number of our own workforce operates. And thus, before the review of these procedures, we have taken these two steps, two significant steps. One is to look at the attrition rates and if they are within the healthy levels of the particular country and the business unit in focus. And then to review the results of the company-wide employee engagement that you mentioned before, including topics regarding the employee well-being, to discuss about the results with the people at the headquarters, the HR at headquarters, and then understand the data analysis behind the results and deep dive into this with the local management in order to provide helpful suggestions in the right direction. Our leadership team is committed to a structured program of follow-up actions to the results of this survey. So we are eager to review the status of these action plans and provide assurance to the board that they are progressing, they are implemented effectively and progressing according to plan. On top of this, I could add that we are, as I said at the beginning, we are looking at the health and safety matters, and health and safety matters. Of course, we have multiple ISO certifications, and we have a second line team that performs regular inspections across the globe where we have operations. However, we have taken a thematic review of these processes because we wanted to give an overall picture to our board, whether these procedures are handled effectively across the world. So it was a very constructive. I think at the end the results were very important because they had a synthesis of the results of what the second line has produced.
Mm-hmm. Great. Vanessa?
In our case, we performed last year an engagement associated with health, safety, and well-being. In the case of BBVA, we are we are a bank, so we are not developing a physical work. So psychological and well-being is even more important than the other part. It was an assurance project where we, based on the current regulation in Spain, we have a lot of regulation about that, especially about health and safety. And in the well-being part, we focus on what we publicly mention in the media or in the annual report, because at the end, if a company says that they are doing a lot for the well-being of the employees, that they take care of us, they should demonstrate to us that they are doing something. Here, data is also important, because if they say that they are doing a lot of initiatives, and on the other hand, you see that the number of illnesses and leaves due to mental illnesses is increasing, maybe the initiatives are not going well. It's important also how they measure all these initiatives. Some of the difficulties that we found in this engagement, sometimes it was not easy, because union labor make a lot of pressure with these topics, so the area was quite worried about what can we say. Some things can be a little bit technical, so we don't have the expertise in this topic, so we have to learn a lot and try to learn quick to perform this engagement. Depending on how your company manages, maybe you will need to visit some buildings and the workplace to see if they are complying with the regulation, or maybe you should make some surveys to the employees. So as I mentioned before, in the talent management, a good planning is important to see all the data available and to decide which is the best way to plan this engagement.
No, perfect. I want to quickly explore something that was mentioned before, the second lines. So I think many companies that do have a second line that focuses on safety and health. Maritza, you mentioned that. I mean, how do you go about that? I mean, like at Roche, we also have a second line. We do actually coordinate with them quite closely, what they look at, what we look at. And we sometimes even audit them actually to see whether they are effective in their mandate and in their strategy. How does that work with you, Maritza?
Yeah, we actually audit them first to make sure that the sources of information they're right and the information is accurate, and then we combine we reuse the data that they produce to make to synthesize the puzzle, to take bits and pieces and put them all together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Vanessa, I think you had.
Yeah, similar than Marisa, we also have a second line, a people risk second line. So we try to coordinate with them to use all the results of their analysis, but sometimes we go faster and we start doing audits before them. So it depends on the case. For example, in Wellbeing, they haven't performed any analysis yet, so they will use for sure our conclusions for their job.
Yeah. Maybe I just briefly look back to when we had the survey from the participants at the beginning. I mean, we had actually a fair amount of no presence at all. I do think, again, well-being probably has two angles. One is the physical well-being, the other one is more the mental well-being. And I think we would all agree that there needs to be some numbers within the company that you could have at least a starting point. I mean, if you don't even have any numbers collected within the company, then you probably already have an issue. Because again, I don't know the details on CSRD, but probably a lot of that would have to be reported externally, or is maybe published externally as well. So I think it's data that is available that might be a good starting point to explore some of the questions and some of the risks here.
Yeah. I fully concur with what you just said, Stefan, because really it's a multifaceted item. So you need a starting point from strong data on that. Otherwise, auditing that without a starting point is super difficult. There are so many areas. The IT support, for instance, could be one of them. The quality of the premises, the safety of the area in which the offices are located, etc. All that comes into play.
Yeah. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Laurent. Good. Then let's go to the last question before we head over into the Q&A. And pretty straightforward. How do you build expertise? I mean, we've seen that the presence isn't quite there as we should be in internal audit. It's a really diverse subject. What are some of the things that you have done to build expertise and have a meaningful impact with your audits? Maybe Vanessa, can I put you first onto the spotlight?
Yes, in our case, we dedicate a lot of time for investigation. We try to join all the newsletters from the Human Resources Organization. We try to attend as many webinars as possible. At the end, we try to learn, to know about trends, to try to identify the risk and to prepare as better as possible our engagement. And on the other hand, I think it's very important to be very close to the area, of course, in all the risk, but maybe in a risk like that, it's even more important. In our experience, human resource area was not so used to us as maybe other areas are. So being close to them has been very useful for us, and trying to attend to their committees, to their offsite, to their meetings, always guaranteeing our independency. But I think that being close to them will help you a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. Proximity, right? Proximity yet independence. Yeah. Laurent?
Yeah, totally aligned with what Vanessa said, and we are building expertise from generalist auditors by being very close to the second line. So we learn from HR. They are coaching us, who are building the work program with us. They are building the work program with us, and whenever they have a new item, they provide learning sessions. And that's how we build. And then, our auditors go on the field, and they are confronted to HR, on the first line. And that's how we build the expertise, really, little by little, but by building this proximity with the HR, the global HR department.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Laurent. Maritza?
Similar techniques. I mean, we have a development plan for all our auditors, depending on the plan that we have next year, and we try to upgrade the skills and update the skills and according to the requirements of our plan. We may use also external resources, depending on how technical the matters are. And we want to have regular updates from what the regulatory bodies of EU to understand the new requirements and so on, and be in the first line of, have the news as quickly as possible.
Yeah, Maritza, I think on the external support, we look at that often as well. I don't know how you feel, but for us, it's very often a budget question. And so, yeah, external support costs quite a bit of money. So what we typically would do as well in some of these emerging subjects, or actually more broadly, is guest auditor assignments. I don't know whether you would do that as well, that you bring a guest auditor that is from a bit a different part of the organization. You bring somebody in that helps you then on an engagement that is in a similar area, but not necessarily in the same, to avoid independence issues. Vanessa, Laurent, is that something you would do as well?
Not in our case. We perform all the engagement in an internal way, but I think that it's something that the department is starting to think, especially for some specific and maybe more technical engagements, but not for now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and aligned with Vanessa, we audit HR and human capital really based on our own resources from generalists who we train. But we have seen indeed for things which are super technical, super specific, like pensions, benefits. Really, we would need indeed external help. So far, we have not dwelled into those very, very technical areas as such, and we have kept them outside for the time being.
Yeah, okay. I mean, for us, what we sometimes do as well is, like if we see that a new area is emerging and it might be relevant for the next 2 or 3 years, we actually recruit people that have an expertise. It's kind of an obvious one that maybe, you know, we give up a bit on the audit expertise and we bring in more the risk subject matter expertise in for a couple of years again to build up a capability. So I think again, there's a variety of actions you can take. It's then really depending on, again, how much do you focus on it. Do you want to do it at one time just with a bit of external support, or something that is a bit more strategic long term? Yeah, Laura, I wasn't sure anything to add. Sorry. All right, good. Good, then it's time for Q&A. Thanks a lot to the panel for a first one. Let's have a look what comes up in the Q&A. So please scan the QR code. You can vote the questions up and down. So we'll wait a minute or two to see what's evolving, and then we'll see whether we can get the collective intelligence here on some of these subjects.
What do we do, Stefan? We take a shot at answering the
Let's
first
just
one.
wait a second until we have a bit of an evolution. Actually, it's evolving quicker than I thought it would. So we have this. Maybe we start with that, right? How do you take AI in the equation, knowing, for instance, ChatGPT seems already able to replace junior auditor or lawyers? Yeah, I think I will pass that to a tech company first. Laurent.
Thanks, Stefan.
So the company.
Yeah, so I think indeed there's a lot of excitement around ChatGPT, but I think we are not yet at a place where I can replace any auditor. That's a different conversation for lawyers, because I think on certain aspects of law, especially research, indeed, ChatGPT can be very, very efficient. But having said that, you know, it's important, I think, for any department to have very clear roadmap on data and AI. You know, I wouldn't just, you know, put aside ChatGPT, because I think it's a continuum. You know, you need to start with data visualization. We are talking earlier with yourself, with Marisa and Vanessa, you know, on the importance to get data. Our internal audit departments need to have access to this data, you know, to this, you know, the gold mine I was referring to, you know, on this employee surveys, you know, the people dashboards, etc. They exist internally. We need to access that, and from the data visualization, build up your plan towards scripting, doing data mining, and then you can do some AI, you know, to automate some tasks. But I think it's important, you know, to take the full continuum, you know, on from data visualization, data mining, and then towards AI.
Mm-hmm. Vanessa, Maritza, any thoughts from your side?
One thought about ChatGPT is that it has to be, we have to treat these tools in a skeptical way. I mean, and I think security matters a lot. And in order to use such tools, you have to make sure that whatever you input into this data, whatever you feed them, are in a secure place, in a corporate environment, and not over the web. So unless you have these tools internally, I wouldn't feel very comfortable to use them, and I would suggest to avoid them. But if you have corporate tools for AI tools, then you can definitely use them. They can definitely increase your productivity, but not replace the auditors yet. We're not there. I agree with Laura.
Vanessa?
Yes, for sure, it won't replace us, but I think it's a good tool that we need to explore and to see the positive and the advantages of that. BBVA is using a lot artificial intelligence and, of course, internal audit department. We have some licenses, and we are starting to, of course, with a policy and procedures to ensure that it's we use that in a safe way with a lot of training. We are starting to make some tests to see how it works. In case of human capital, I didn't find a lot the use yet, but I think it will come with the future. One of the most interesting things that I have found is for all the analysis of the regulation, because it's very useful. It's useful when you have to see if a procedure, for example, is aligned with the regulation. It's very easy to check with ChatGPT. Of course, you have to review after that, but to understand regulation and to see what's coming and to see if what your company is doing is aligned with that, I think it can be very helpful.
Mm-hmm. I would agree with you, Vanessa, what you said in terms of AI in the context of human capital. For me or for us, maybe not that relevant yet, but generally AI definitely relevant. How I would probably say it is, in terms of driving efficiency, absolutely. In terms of driving effectiveness, maybe not quite sure yet. We are all exploring. Let's see how the space evolves, right? And I think it's important that we use it as internal audit as well. I think that's for sure, that we figure out what the use cases are and prioritize and do it. Yeah. But Laura, to your comment, lawyer versus auditor, I think there's also my perspective would have been similar. I think auditor maybe not so much. Lawyers, we hear a lot about it, and I think when you look at statistics, it is one of the jobs that is more likely to be replaced by AI. I think we just have to be careful that we don't have a blind spot when it comes to AI. Good. Let's park the AI question here. We have the next top voted up would be any experience and or work program to share regarding a dedicated diversity audit. Tough one, huh? Did anybody do really a dedicated diversity audit?
I can answer if you want. We performed last year one engagement. As I mentioned before, the objective was to evaluate if all the initiatives that the company was performing were enough to fulfill public commitments. We have, for example, one public commitment associated with the percentage of women in managerial position. So we try to see if all the things that they were doing were enough to get that commitment. Also, how diversity is integrated in the processes. For example, in the hiring process, if job offers descriptions have an inclusive language. I think it's not happening now, but some years ago, offers were written using masculine gender, saying, for example, we are a young department, so maybe you can be discriminating older people. So, for example, analyzing the job description is good practice. Also, in the other processes, promotion, mobilities, you can see with the data how is these processes performing. For example, if in a specific group of people, of gender, age, etc., data have a different behavior. For example, if people over a certain age has less performance in the annual reviews. And also, for example, with people with disabilities, I'm quite sure that in all the countries, we have some regulation associated with the percentage of number of employees with disabilities. So we can evaluate here if the company is first place, complying with the law, and if they are doing enough in terms of inclusion. Another part from our work program was also reporting. We identify all the data, qualitative and quantitative also in the annual report, and we try to see if we have enough controls, if data quality data was the correct one. So that was our three main pillar. But if someone needs more detail, you can contact me and I can give you more details about the specific tests we perform. I think it's possible and in assurance way. So it's not easy, but it's possible.
No, thanks a lot, Vanessa. That's quite a broad perspective, actually. Laurent, Maritza, anything to add?
May I make a link with the previous question, because I think that there are there are some synergies. What we will see pretty fast, I think, is the deployment in recruitment teams of agents, of AI agents, to qualify all the letters of candidates automatically. Okay, so it would be very important, and these things are working and they are delivering a huge efficiency, for companies like ours, which are receiving thousands of resumes every week. Okay, so I think it would be important to test indeed if there is no bias in those engines. Okay.
Very, very important, Laurent, what you are talking about right now. I think it's very important.
Yeah.
And yeah, it does start with the intake, right? As you mentioned, Vanessa. I mean, upfront, your job postings that you put out there, that they're put out the right way, that there's no biases, there is no gender bias or anything in it, that they're fairly open. So yeah, good. In the interest of time, let's move on to the next one. How do you assess risks related to human capital?
So I think, Stefan, we have been pretty consistent. The three of us. There are really two things are here. I think the attrition rate at first and at a helicopter view is providing very good input, and also the results of the latest engagement. The survey of employees. From my point of view, these are the two things. And I think we have delivered a consistent message here.
We use exactly the same measures.
Yeah, Maritza. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we use exactly the same measures with Laurent.
Yeah. And I think maybe it's even broader, right? I mean, think about all the data that would help you to assess the risk and whether you have that data within the company. Again, attrition, employee surveys, or whatever you have, whatever you would have. And I think maybe the other one that I would think to be quite important is also, conversations, discussions with key stakeholders. What do they see? How do they look at it? Are they aware of, again, human capital and the value of our employees, right? And how do they go about it? And if some of the leaders cannot articulate a good story, then maybe that's something to look at in a respective area. So yeah, I think data and conversation, right? That's what ultimately matters. Good. I think we need 1 or 2 minutes to close off. So apologies for not being able to cover all the subjects. I do want to mention something before I pass back to Pascal, that we can close in a timely manner. We did touch on well-being. We looked at it a bit from a health safety perspective. There is a paper that has been issued by the IIA in the Netherlands on psychological safety, which is then quite important, obviously, for inclusion. And there's quite a few hints on how you can go about psychological safety, auditing psychological safety, the concepts behind it, the importance to it. It's definitely a really important one once you start looking a bit, beyond the standard stuff, and that's actually a real good paper. So you can just Google it, psychological safety, Netherlands, IIA, and I think it's the first link that you will see. So with that, thanks a lot, Laurent, Vanessa, Maritza, for joining me today on the panel. Hopefully we were able to deliver some good insights to you, the participants, and further inspirations for our work. With that, back to Pascal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stefan. I think for sure we heard today that human and talent management is quite a diverse topic, and that internal audit has a role to play, but should do more than what they did. It's also hopefully in the future not just a business risk, as we saw, it's top 2 risk in risk in focus publication, but it's also a compliance risk with all the new regulation in Europe like CSRD and others. So it's a very important topic for the profession. In terms of lessons learned, I think you mentioned that it's very important to be transparent, especially aligned with the new generation wishes. It's important to have the right data. And I like your expression, Laurent, when you mentioned that actually data process is key and that employee survey are gold mine. That's a very good takeaway. Thank you for that. Procedures are also very important. Relation and collaboration with the second line is key and can help us. And then finally, the very difficult question to answer, how can we get the knowledge in the internal audit departments, mixed of different things, including hiring people with experience on this topic rather than good auditors maybe to help you. So very interesting discussion. Thank you very, very much for that. I remind you that if you want to read the full Risk in Focus report, you can find it on the ECIA website. I also remind you that next week we have the new episode of the Risk in Focus webinars on digital disruption, so don't hesitate to join us. And finally, I would like to thank the facilitator, but also the speakers and also Chiara and all the people working on this topic with us. So thank you very, very much. Have a good afternoon and see you maybe next year for another conversation on this very important topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.